manifestações e o desagrado do povo judeu contra o Benjamin Netanyahu não diminuíram com essa guerra, pelo contrário. Prestem atenção nesse vídeo aqui.
Netanyahu intentionally let Hamas kill Israelis. Both the IDF and the Israeli Air Force both stood down for 7 hours. You won't believe what a Jewish charity leader told me today.
Israel has the most sophisticated intelligence in the world. There was no way the government didn't know that that was going to happen. We're friendly with several good people in Israel. One is Rabbi Hanania Weissman. He knows a lot of people in Israel. He knows confidential sources that he shared with us their information about the stand-down order. He sent out a missive that, indeed, the IDF was given stand-down orders, both the Army and the Air Force, 7 hours to stand down while those attacks took place. And this allowed the terrorists to come in and begin slaughtering and torturing the citizens. Personally, I think that this situation is akin to a family keeping a rabid dog in their home and then blaming the dog when the baby gets bitten. The parents needed to remove the dog many weeks ago, right, before the dog had a chance to injure somebody in the family. So I look at the government of Israel, and they really needed to make sure that these people did not proliferate on their borders. And so they are held partially accountable for having to now go kill God's creations in order to secure their border. This should never have happened.
Olha só, o que ela disse, que o exército e a força aérea ambos receberam ordens de stand down, quer dizer, não façam nada. Ficaram parados por 7 horas. Enquanto isso, os terroristas do Hamas fizeram o que fizeram. Esse é o último vídeo disso que eu creio se tornará em um escândalo de proporções dantescas. Porque isso sendo confirmado, eu não sei se em Israel existe pena de morte, mas o Netanyahu será julgado não por um tribunal de Israel, mas sim internacional. Um dos primeiros vídeos que levantou essa possibilidade foi de uma ex-soldado que trabalhou na fronteira com a faixa de Gaza. E ela disse o seguinte:
October 7th, 2023. This is Efrat Fenigzon, and I'm here to share an update from Israel-Hamas war, which started this morning. I'm going to share some key details and concerns, mostly based on Israeli citizens' voices from the ground and based on official statements. This is a very tough day for me and for us in Israel, and it is tough for people of Palestine too, especially now that Israel is starting to attack back. This war and every war is a horrible thing for everyone involved, except for those who get rich from it, right? This morning, around 6 a.m., around sunrise, hundreds of Hamas terrorists, at least 300, breached the border fence in multiple places, completely unimpeded, leading to terror attacks and kidnappings in Israeli towns or villages. The terrorists infiltrated a significant number of dry land outposts, as well as a naval infiltration point in Zikim. As we speak, Israel is actively engaged in combat in 22 outposts. This is from the IDF statement, the official statement. The attacks have already resulted in over 100 casualties and more than 100 kidnaps of Israeli citizens. In one village, 50 Israelis have been taken hostage, leaving people locked in shelters for long periods of 8 to 9 hours without rescue. By the way, the 100 kidnappings is not the official number. It's what we hear from people on the ground. I think official numbers talk about 30 or 40 people, but we know there are more. In some places, the terrorists were burning the village, and people didn't know if to leave the shelter and surrender or stay and pray for the fire to not reach them. Many young people who were in a big outdoor party near the Gaza envelope villages were attacked there, Some ran away, some were injured, and some are still missing. Apparently, Israeli defense forces that were supposed to be around Gaza were placed around the West Bank because of security concerns, so that the Gaza envelope was left unoccupied with military. They say around 60 to 80% of that area was left without the IDF forces that were supposed to be there. Soldiers are being recruited for reserves as we speak from this morning, but because of stupid reasons such as no public transport, they're waiting hours to get to the bases. Mainstream media, this is an interesting point, apparently admits that IDF spokesperson is forbidding them to tell the complete truth about what's happening, highlighting a lack of transparency. And this is to the Israeli citizens. I'm not even talking about overseas. I'm talking about to the people of Israel here. For hours and hours, the reports that came from the mainstream media were completely lacking, and people started to rely mostly on the news from each other, from people on the ground. Only now, 6 p.m. Israel time, or it's actually 7 already, 12 hours after the event started, we received the first formal statement from the IDF spokesperson, and I will include an article with that statement in the notes. A year ago, there was a military operation in Gaza to prepare for such events, and ongoingly there are trainings for these kind of scenarios. This raises serious questions for me anyway about Israeli intelligence. What happened? 2 years ago, there was a successful deployment of underground barriers with sensors to alert exactly on these kind of terrorist breaches. Israel has one of the most advanced and high-tech armies. How come there was zero response to the border and fence breaching? I cannot understand that. Personally, I served in the IDF 25 years ago in the intelligence forces. There's no way, in my view, that Israel did not know of what's coming. A cat moving alongside the fence is triggering all forces. So what happened to the strongest army in the world? How come border crossings were wide open? Something is very wrong here. Something is very strange. This chain of events is very unusual and not typical for the Israeli defense system. With the recent normalization efforts of Israel and Palestine led by Saudi Arabia, I wonder whether a prisoners exchange deal is something that could only be seriously considered by Israel if a shocking event like that happened. Is it a possibility that only with Israel hostages it can be justified to release dangerous prisoners from Israeli prisons? I don't know. Mainstream media reported that Deputy Hamas leader Salah al-Aruri suggests using Israeli prisoners for leverage in negotiations. So maybe. A point about the situation in Israel in the past few years, which I want to make, is related to, and those who follow me know that there's a general sense of insecurity in Israel. There's political and social instability and unrest. Public funds are being misused on agendas such as COVID, climate, judicial reform, abolishing cash, and many more. The current government is highly corrupt in my view, while the previous one was no better. I don't care about having a popular opinion. I care about exposing evil forces wherever and whomever they are. So to me, this surprise attack seems like a planned operation on all fronts. This is a failure to protect the people of Israel, for sure. Perhaps the biggest failure since the Yom Kippur War exactly 50 years ago, if not bigger. By the way, is it a coincidence it's exactly 50 years ago, almost on the day? The Yom Kippur War was on October 6, 1973. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that this feels like the work of the deep state. It feels like the people of Israel and the people of Palestine have been sold once again to the higher powers that be. At the same time, this is still very, very difficult to fathom. Have a good evening.
25 anos trabalhou essa mulher no serviço de inteligência das Forças Armadas, e ela diz: que é praticamente impossível que Israel não soubesse o que estava acontecendo. E que o povo de Israel, juntamente com o povo da Palestina, foram vendidos e que isso é um trabalho do Deep State. Depois vem um rabino, que também tem os seus contatos e comentou a mesma coisa.
I spoke to a few people who used to be in intelligence. They say if a mouse would touch the fence, 20 jeeps will get there in less than a minute. This is how strict it used to be. It has to be an inside job. Cannot be that they broke the fence in 15 places and broke in and nobody responded, not one bullet was shot. And then they occupied a military base that had tanks over there. And they took the tank and they drove over people. Do you know what it means? You drive in a car and a tank goes over you and smash you and make your bones into powders. Do you know what a way to die? Like ISIS, that's ISIS used to do it to people. Make them run and the tanks drive over them. Probably, I don't know, 20, 30 tons. Grind every inch of you. After such a thing, what do you see on the floor? Like a piece of paper. There's nothing, you don't see skeleton, no spine, no nothing, no head. Smash everything, it's very heavy. With all the chains, that's what they did to people. Besides all the shooting and all of that.
Esse é um dos rabinos mais conhecidos em Nova York. Então veja bem, eu trouxe duas pessoas que receberam informações de também um rabino que trabalha muito próximo ao sistema de segurança em Israel e falou que sim, o Benjamin Netanyahu sabia e não fez nada. Depois, uma ex-militar que serviu por 25 anos nas Forças de Defesa de Israel, no Departamento de Inteligência, que diz que é praticamente impossível que Israel não soubesse o que está acontecendo. Um rabino de Nova York que diz que isso só pode ter sido um inside job, ou seja, um trabalho de gente de dentro. E tem mais outro rabino aqui, esse do Tennessee, que também comenta algo a respeito.
I said one thing. I told you so. I warned you that these things were coming. I said to you in my recent videos to understand the nature of the relationship of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and what we call Hoshana Rabbah. That when it comes to the edicts and judgment of God, you have Rosh Hashanah where it's signed, Yom Kippur where it's sealed, and on Hoshana Rabbah it's delivered. And literally, at the end of that day of Hoshana Rabbah, war began. Now understand and know this is only the beginning of things. Things are going to escalate globally. This is all a plan, as we say, Me'et Hashem Hayatazot. This is God's plan. This is the way it's going to be. And for those of you who think that this is going to be isolated to Israel, you are deadly wrong. And I say deadly wrong because this is going to spill out everywhere. It's going to spill out into the streets of all the major cities around the world. It's going to spill out into the streets of the United States, Europe, even Australia, Canada. No one's going to be safe anywhere. You're going to have chaos. You're going to have violence. You're going to have upheavals. Israel is going to have conflict with Iran. One way or another, it's going to happen. Iran, as we know, is in the hands of Russia right now. Israel's in the hands of the United States. We see where all the chess pieces are coming down on the board. The great war of Gog and Magog that was prophesied, it's materializing right now. Things are happening. And like I said, this is all part of God's plans. You're not going to change it. You're not going to run away from it. And in case you think that you're going to be able to hide behind a facade of religion, and that by reciting psalms, you're magically going to be protected. Okay? If that's the way you believe, let's find out if you're right or not. Because about 100 years or so ago, many did exactly that. And they all ended up either dead or in Auschwitz. and died there, most likely.
Tá aí. Só que esse rabino ele fala mais da parte espiritual desse evento. Depois, o pessoal do Hamas dá uma entrevista para uma televisão da Rússia e conta com detalhes como tudo isso foi planejado. Vamos ver aqui.
أن ساعة الصفر كانت سرية للغاية. عدد محدود من قيادة حماس يعرف أقل من أصابع اليد الذين كانوا يعرفون عن العملية وتوقيتها. وحماس سلوكها في السنتين الماضيات انه عقلاني وما بتدخل في حروب وما وقفت مع الجهاد الاسلامي في معركته السابقه.
لكن هي كانت ضمن استراتيجيه
طبعا انه حماس مشغوله بالحكومه في غزه وبدها تدير بالها على 1.5 مليون فلسطيني وملتهيه وخلص تركت المقاومه، لكن حماس من تحت الطاوله كانت تحضر لهذه العمليه الكبيره، وصواريخ المقاومه اليوم بتغطي كل فلسطين. وين بده ياخذنا؟ على تل ابيب؟ ما احنا من اليوم الاول قصفنا تل ابيب، بده ياخذنا على الجليل. الجبهه الشماليه انفتحت اليوم مع لبنان، يعني ليست آمن الجليل الان للعدو الصهيوني، ونحن قادرون ان نقصف الجليل من فلسطين المحتله. لسريه المعركه ولنجاح ساعه الصفر ما كان حد يعرف من الفصائل، وحتى الحلفاء ما كانوا يعرفوا ساعه الصفر، لكن بعد نصف ساعه جرى اتصال مع كافه فصائل المقاومة الفلسطينية ومع حلفائنا في حزب الله في إيران، تم تبليغهم الأتراك، تم تبليغهم، صار لقاء معهم بعد 3 ساعات، يعني 9 صباحا، وكذلك كل من اتصل بنا وضعناه بالصورة. حتى الروس أرسلوا رسالة واستفسروا، كذلك تم وضعهم بالموقف وبأهداف المعركة.
في معتقلين فلسطينيين أيضا خارج إسرائيل في دول أوروبية،
في معتقلين في أمريكا
كمان
بدنا إياهم طبعا. في عندنا من حماس معتقلين في أمريكا ومحكومين مؤبدات، كمان بدنا إياهم طبعا. نطالب أمريكا أن تفرج عن أبنائنا اللي في سجونها، وأمريكا عم بتعمل تبادل، عملت مع إيران قبل مدة قريبة تبادل، ليش ما تعمل معنا تبادل؟ ما هي شريكي في هذه المعركة. أعلن بايدن، أعلى سلطة في أمريكا، أعلن وقوفه مع إسرائيل ضد حماس، ضد الشعب الفلسطيني، لذلك هو شريك في العدوان، عليه أيضا أن يدفع الثمن. الإسرائيلي معروف عنه أنه بحب الحياة، إحنا بنضحي، نعتبر أنه قتلانا شهداء، فأمنا يعني أهم أمنية عند أي واحد فلسطيني أنه يستشهد في سبيل الله. محضرين حالنا إلنا سنتين عم نحضر وصنعنا كثير، وعندنا مصانع كل شيء، عندنا من صواريخ 250 كيلو ل 160 كيلو ل 80 كيلو ل 45 كيلو ل 10 كيلو، عندنا مصانع هاونات وقذائفها، مصانع بسفن وقذائفها، مصانع بيتن وقذائفها، مصانع كلاشينكوف ورصاصته، رصاصة كلاشينكوف عم نصنعها بالإذن من الروس، عم نصنعها في غزة. صرنا اليوم احنا اللي بدعمنا بالمال والسلاح، بشكل رئيسي إيران بتعطينا مال وسلاح، هذا أكيد. حزب الله، في عنا شعوب عربية وإسلامية واقفة معنا، في عنا دول تؤيدنا بالموقف السياسي. حتى الروسي اليوم متعاطف معنا، حتى الروسي يعني أرسل رسائل صباح أمس في تعاطف، ويعني سعيد أن تربك أمريكا في فلسطين، تعرف بتخفف عنه الضغط في أوكرانيا، لأنه معركة بتخفف عن معركة، فلذلك إحنا لسنا وحدنا في الميدان.
Então a gente pensa, pessoal, que tipo de ser humano é capaz de sacrificar o seu próprio povo com o intuito de cumprir uma profecia de trazer uma Mashiach, a fim de que aquilo que foi mostrado mais cedo, se você não viu a live de hoje mais cedo, veja, da profecia do Schneerson, abençoando, profetizando para o Benjamin Netanyahu, de que ele daria as chaves da cidade de Jerusalém para o Messias.